Okay, we're good to go, Stephanie.
Great. Awesome. All right. So good evening, staff, committee members, and also welcome to members of the public who are joining us online for this April 27th meeting of the Environment Committee. So I'll call the meeting to order. So we had the agenda circulated ahead of time. So I hope all committee members had a chance to take a look at it. And so I'd like to start with the approval of the agenda. Are there any, if you're ready to make a motion to approve it, that's fine. If anyone has any changes or anything. No? Okay, so if someone wants to give me a motion to approve, I think Colleen put her hand up. Yeah, and seconder.
I haven't had a chance to look at it. I'll second it.
Okay, no, you can go look at it. Look at it right now. Don't worry. It's, it's not that long. I'm sure you can breeze right through it.
It's very vague, so I'm sure we can kind of elaborate on it when we get to each point. If I can find it.
Got it. Good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we got so all in favor of approving the agenda? Okay, carried. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so next item is approval of the minutes from the March 2nd, 2021 meeting. So, Mike, those were sent out very recently. So, I totally understand if you haven't had a chance to look at those yet.
I'm looking at them right now.
Yeah. So, okay.
Not terribly complicated either.
No.
I'll move to accept.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Okay, thank you, Colleen. All in favor of approving the minutes? Thank you. Great, thank you. Okay, so business arising from the minutes. I do have one question. Does anyone else have one before I go with mine?
I do, and I can't even find the agenda in these emails. Sorry.
Oh.
Can someone send me the agenda? Oh, hang on.
It was also in the calendar invite, if that helps.
Yeah, I didn't see what. Crystal, can you just forward that to me while we're talking, please? The agenda doesn't seem to be coming up in my Gmail. Okay, sorry, go ahead. I do have some questions about the minutes, but go ahead, Stephanie, with yours.
Sure. Okay. So my question, and I think Chris LeBlanc, yeah, he's online. So my question was about the waste composition study. So last our committee met, they had completed the second round of data collection, and that we said information would be provided by the end of March. So I was just hoping for a status update on that. Because that's a topic that kind of impacts a lot of the work that we're doing. So I'm very curious on the results. So if Chris is
I'm thinking Derek can probably give us all that.
But I didn't. Did Derek's group do the waste composition study? I thought it was a different one.
Yeah, I think we're thinking of two different reports. The waste composition study was done by Stewardship Ontario.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Right.
Go ahead, Chris, if you wanted to jump in there.
Sorry, Stephanie, can you repeat your question, please?
Sure. No. So this last time our committee met, we asked about the status of the waste composition study, and I think you had explained then that the fall-winter round of data collection had been completed, and that we probably would get information back by the end of March, perhaps. So I was just curious, what's the update on that? I'm very curious about that one just because it impacts a lot of the stuff that we're doing.
Yes, as of yet, I have not received any word from them, but I believe I should follow up. I'll probably follow up tomorrow, but I have not heard anything as of yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, then we'll probably ask the same question at the next meeting.
Okay. Okay, so my question was the same one too, about the waste composition study, because yes, we're waiting on that for our bag limits. So that was my question. So I'm assuming no updates on bag limits at this moment.
I don't expect one because of, yeah. But Chris, I'll let you elaborate if you'd like to.
Yeah, no, I don't have anything as yet. Once we get the information to us, then we can move forward with the bag limits.
Okay, and then the recycle coach, has anything happened on that yet? Which is a business arising from the minutes of the minutes.
Hi, Angie. That will be a part of the communications plan. We have an update on that in our discussion on our plans moving forward with communications.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any other questions, business arising from the minutes? Okay, awesome. So then in our agenda, we had said we'd have the communication plan first and then the regional waste management project, but if it's all right with all the members of the committee, I'd like to switch those in order and go ahead and do the regional waste management project item first, because we have Mr. Derek Ali from DFA Infrastructure International, who's the group that completed that project, and he's joining us, to give us an overview of that, and more importantly, to help guide us in a discussion of, where's important points of feedback that they're looking for in that project from us. So with that, I don't see any objections. Okay, so great. So then I'd like to invite Mr. Ali to join us.
Hi.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess, and thanks for bumping me up on the agenda. Although I think I might be interested in hearing about the communications plan, but I can get that later.
Well, you're welcome to join, to stay on till the end.
Yeah. So I'm not sure how I'll ask the group. I'm sure most of you probably have seen the presentation that was given to the counties. I think it was distributed as well to your committee today. We've made a few tweaks, so I don't know if you wish, I can just go through just a few of the key slides. But basically, we want to get your input on, how you see things working collaboratively and what that means for some of the programs that the town may have, and some of the services. And, I was just making a note that you have a waste composition study going on, so that may shed some light on how you wish to change, or increase your diversion going forward. So anyway, what I would do, if it's okay with the group, I will just share my screen for a bit and just point to a few slides, and then we can go from there. Let's see.
Perfect. That sounds great.
I don't believe I'm allowed to share my screen. So
Derek, I just gave you some permissions, so
all right,
give that a try again.
Okay, let's see if you can. Okay, can you see it there?
Yes.
Yep. Should say, okay, good. So this is just of course, the front slide. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's, I don't know, about 30 slides or so. But I'll just sort of bring you up to speed on where we are, so you know where things stand. The study has 4 phases. We are just at the end of phase 2, and that's the report that you would have seen circulated, phases 1 and 2, and it's in draft form. So we're getting comments back on that. as well as prepping for phase 3, which is the collaboration opportunities, and that, you know, that's municipalities working together in some form of fashion. So that's sort of where we are. I'll run right down to this slide here, which is sort of a 25-year outlook on, you know, how all the systems are, particularly with disposal, how that's going to look going forward. And from left to right, you'll see here this arrow. It shows some dates, some years in there that are critical for some of the municipalities, because that's when their existing landfill sites are expected to be at capacity or close. So you would see here that for, where is it here? The North Lancaster and the Beaver Brook sites, we have those estimated to close in 2025 and 2033, respectively. And at the presentation to SDGs Council, the deputy mayor indicated that, you know, there may be a wish to continue to use those sites. So beyond those dates. So I think from our perspective, we're just trying to, you know, whichever way you wish to go, then we would assume that in our projections going forward, and what that means for collaboration and so on and so forth. So I think one of the questions I would have for the committee is just on that is, you know, are these sites going to close, or is there a desire to keep them going? And so that's something we would ask for some feedback on from your group. We do have, just on that, we have assembled some preliminary data, and I'm sure I'm not familiar with any of the sites, so I really don't know what it would entail to seek an expansion, but sort of very preliminary information suggests that perhaps if North Lancaster is going to be extended, then that effort needs to be initiated fairly soon, because it takes a while, as we all know, to get approvals and so on and so forth. And similarly for Beaver Brook. So, so that's one aspect. The other aspect is that we have some preliminary numbers from South Dundas and North Dundas on their expansions that they are currently involved with, and the rough estimates are around 2.4 million on each site. So you'd probably be looking at that, you know, somewhere in that vicinity for the two sites here. Of course, that depends on if you have to acquire lands for contaminant attenuation, or you know, just lands for disposal, additional lands, or if you can go on top with a lift and things like that. So so there's, I mean, quite a bit of assumptions in all of that, but just to give a very high level orders of magnitude number, that's what they're looking at for their expansions. So there's that, which I will leave with you, and then I'll go right down to throw this slide in. So this is new. This was not in the presentation before. And this sort of assumes that roughly 2.4 million per site, with some assumptions around getting going fairly quickly on the initial investigation. So some of the technical, environmental type investigations, then the environmental assessment, and then of course there'd be a design and construction. And of course the construction itself would be phased over time as the site is used. You know, develop it as you go. So so we've made some assumptions. So it sort of gives a profile. This is, you know, from 2021 to 2044. It gives a profile of your cost of disposal here. And you would see, you know, it fluctuates depending on where you are in the expansions of those sites. One of the things that you will not have, of course, in this period is, if you go with the extension, is you will not have the closure costs, because that would be pushed out much further beyond the 2044 period or time frame. Nevertheless, that's still an obligation. It's still a requirement that the town will have to finance that. So it sits on the books as a liability, perhaps I would say mostly unfunded liability until it's actually done. And in keeping with the PSAB, or the accounting standards, and the guideline 3280, which is fairly new, but it covers landfill sites as well as other sites. All municipalities are required to account for that liability in their financial returns to the province. The other two lines here are the waste collection, which is that blue line, and you can see it sort of gradually increases, which is just, you know, inflationary increases. And the other one, the green line, is your diversion. So this really assumes that the town will have no responsibility for recycling after 2025. So no responsibility for collection, no responsibility for processing and sale of recyclables. And that's due to the, as you probably all know, the new legislation, relatively new legislation, that would transfer responsibility to the producers of the packaging. So what that means is the cost that the town is currently incurring to have those programs would no longer be there beyond 2025. So I guess in the one sense, one may think about it from the perspective of having funding room that could be utilized for other forms of diversion. On the other hand, you can just look at it as a cost savings. So that's another area, you know, you were just discussing or just asking about the waste composition study. And I think there's a lot of discussion about Cornwall and their pilot program at the sewage treatment plant, and the possibility of municipalities within SDG working with Cornwall to participate in the organics program there. It's a costly program. Organics is always costly, but if there's a desire to reduce waste, then that's where you get a lot of bang in terms of the actual waste reduction, even though it's expensive. So with the recycling falling off, you may have some room there financially to get into that. You know, of course, you'd have to look at the geographic areas that something like that could be applied to. If it's rural, it may not be practical. If it's, you know, you have higher density areas, then those may be the areas that may be suitable. So, so I'll leave that with you as well. And there's some, I'll just go through the challenges slides here and the issues. And this is generally, there's the landfill capacity is being used with no new capacity coming on stream except for those North and South Dundas. And even South Dundas, I believe they may be reconsidering the expansion and perhaps looking at a transfer station as a possible consideration. There's also no waste scale. So in terms of actually measuring accurately the waste that's going in, it's not inaccurate, but it's not absolutely correct at the moment. And as I mentioned earlier, the increasing liability as the landfill sites close, those have to be looked after in perpetuity pretty much. There's also the increasing cost of waste management with limited resources. And as we know, municipalities are always challenged with budgets, tax increases and all of that. So that's something that's always a challenge. Things like truck maintenance, I can't remember if you do in-house collection, but those are some of the areas that some of the municipalities are experiencing. And the third bullet, there's difficulty in terms of increasing a waste diversion, and as I was just mentioning with the organics program. So that's one of the issues, is that diversion is somewhat stagnant, if you will. That we, from discussions with everyone, that's what we have sort of gathered or understood across the 6 municipalities. We also heard that there's limited staff to actually do progressive planning with respect to waste management. A lot of the staff are occupied with the actual operations and not in the planning, looking ahead to increase diversion or to better manage the systems. And of course, there's the whole transition of recycling to the producers, and that's going to come for all 6 municipalities at the same time in 2025. We're not quite sure what date exactly in 2025, but certainly by the end, by December 31st. So there will be some transitional issues that, as a group, municipalities will have to navigate and manage through. So things like, just public education, so residents can understand what's happening, and maybe, I guess, possibilities of changes in materials collected going forward, maybe even the collection frequency or things like that. We are not sure. The information is very light at the moment in terms of how it's going to really work. But there are certain fundamentals that are there that's a start anyway. So I think going forward, the group would need some sort of coordinated effort to manage that transition. There's also the North Glengarry recycling facility that has some capacity to achieve that. To utilize that full capacity, there would need to be staff added for sorting and a few couple minor maintenance aspects, some of the belts and things like that. But the big issue really is, do you invest in a facility that in 2 years is going to be, or 3 years, it's going to be handed over to someone, are they going to take it? We're not sure if it'll play a role going forward in the bigger scheme. Likely there'll be a rationalization of recycling facilities across the province. Maybe not immediately, but certainly over time. So those are all questions that, issues that need to be looked at a little bit more closely. And then we get into some of the potential collaboration opportunities, and we talked about transitioning the recycling, so the public education would play a role there. You're going to be talking about a communications plan for the town. That's something that could be shared, among the 6 municipalities. Waste collection, there's the opportunity to have maybe joint tendering of contracts, things like that, to see if there's any economies of scale and sharing of resources in that sense. Also for the in-house services, there could be, coverage for emergency situations, even, optimizing the routes between, across municipal boundaries that can be looked at. And the big one really is ensuring landfill capacity. Each municipality has some degree of capacity available, whether it's going through an expansion now or just what's remaining. And there's the opportunity to optimize that landfill capacity, to use it wisely, and by the same token, acknowledge that there is private capacity available that's already licensed. So to see what role that may have, along with the neighboring municipality, which is Cornwall, who also have a limitation on their landfill remaining site life. I think it's about 10, 11 years or something like that. So there's that opportunity to band together to optimize the capacity that's within SDG, as well as to work with Cornwall and the private sector to, achieve longer term disposal capacity. Then there is the opportunity to sort of, I don't want to say, to provide a base level of service across the sectors, to have some consistency in terms of what services are offered to residents, and with the opportunity that some municipalities may be able to add a particular service over and above that sort of base service level. So that's something we are just working on at the moment, and that will come forward as part of the collaboration phase 3. So, if you have comments with respect to that, I know I've heard, I think one councillor was asking about the ability for residents to, sort of get rid of their bulky waste, whether it's at the curb or they drive it to the site, but have that option. And they have different, programs you can set up for different purposes with respect to that. And then, of course, the whole structure of how do you work together under the Municipal Act. Municipalities can have agreements, 1 or 2 or 3 can work together. You can have sort of agencies set up to do that. One municipality can act as the agent for others as a group. And then you also have SDG can play a role in that as well. And there's some options there where you can work through an agreement, or if any particular component of waste management is, the municipalities wish to have SDG take that on, then you will need a triple majority to be able to do that, meaning a majority of the local councils, a majority of the county's council, and a majority of the people represented by the majority of the local councils. And I think you will have that by default, regardless of which municipalities form the default. So the majority, sorry. Things like, in that case, there'd be things like staff transfers. The only municipality right now that has dedicated waste management staff is North Dundas. So there'd be the requirement for staff transfers, protection of their compensation and all of those things, as well as any compensation for assets and liabilities between the 2 levels of government. And of course, one of the things would be compensation for any available landfill capacity or any other types of capacity that may be transferred one way or the other. So that's just these are just options for the structure of what can take place. The next steps really are in trying to get some collaboration options on the table that we can look at more closely and bring back to the group. And then once we have that, it's to prepare an implementation strategy that would have some very distinct and defined steps and timelines to go through to get it done. So at this point, we are asking all the municipalities, and including this group here, that if you can provide some feedback on some of the collaboration opportunities that you think would work for everyone's benefit. And this is meant for council, but any comments on what sort of information would be required in order to make a decision on collaboration, intermunicipal collaboration, that would be welcome as well. And then you also have, I'll go to number 3, I just skipped one. If there's any preference on who should lead the collaboration, of course, once there's collaboration going on, somebody has to be responsible for taking it forward. So any preference on that? And the final question that's put to the municipalities is whether or not there are any unique issues within each municipality that should be considered and addressed going forward. So these are, I guess, just the highlights. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have and go from there.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that overview. Before I open it up to questions to the committee, there's just a couple of points of clarification I wanted to make sure we had straight before we continue. And I know Jennifer Brown-Hahn, who is our liaison with WSP, who does the landfill environmental inspections that are required. And I was hoping if she's able to join us, I know she's in her car, but just on the comment on the information that you have with regards to North Lancaster and our Beaver Brook site, just to confirm whether or not my understanding, my memory was that there is definitely an expansion option at the Beaver Brook site. It does have a lot of space that could accommodate, but I don't recall if that was the case at the Lancaster site. So I was hoping that she could confirm that for us.
So I have had some discussions with Chris. Hello, everybody. Regarding this issue of the possibility of expansion at both sites, actually. I think for the North Lancaster, and obviously we haven't dove into it, we were just discussing it. We haven't looked at any options and so forth, but I do think at North Lancaster that there could be a potential to expand. The first thought that comes to me is hopefully we can be able to expand on top of the current landfill mound. But of course, we'd have to look at the logistics of that as well. You do own quite a bit of property around that site, but we'd have to look at the logistics of if we weren't able to expand on top of the current mound, where that expansion could occur. We have to, of course, keep in mind, our property boundaries. The river Baudette is right there to the north. So those are all things we have to take into consideration as well. For Beaver Brook, again, it's a possibility. My concern with an expansion at Beaver Brook is we are right next to a provincially significant wetland. And we definitely would have to have some pre-consultation with the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks to determine if they would even, fathom the idea of an expansion at Beaver Brook.
We lost you, Jennifer, if you're,
With it being so like right next
oh. Sorry, Jennifer, I guess our connection is not strong enough. We
PSW.
kind of lost you about whether or not an
So that's-
expansion is possible at Beaver Brook. You're saying that it would, you know, it's not a given. There'd be some pre-consultation required to even see if it's possible.
Yes, yes. Sorry, I'm going right by a power substation, so it's probably what's pulling my power away from me. So yes, I think because we're right on a provincially significant wetland, you definitely would have to discuss with the ministry to see if they'd even consider that as being an option. Because, you know, with your being right next to a PSW, there's a lot more logistics that go into the expansion of the landfill and a lot more studies that may need to be done.
Okay, great. Well, I think that was very helpful for the purpose of this discussion. Thank you, Jennifer.
No problem.
And if I can't, there's another point of clarification. And Ms. Derek, on your slide where you were showing the costs and you had the two big peaks, which I assume were associated with costs of expansion or costs of transfer to private landfill. Is that correct, what those peaks were? Or
That is correct. There's also, I believe, sort of added to that would be the cost of replacing your compactor. That's capital cost. I think we've included every 10 or 12 years to have that replaced. So that gets added to whatever capital cost you may have for expansions that, you know, occurring at that time.
okay, thank you for that clarification. Okay, so thanks for letting me ask those clarifying questions. So if the committee members have any questions for Mr. Ali or comments about what we've heard so far. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Derek, I think there was some more info that CAOs were asking for, maybe some clarification. Did that happen or did that come through or has that gotten to you?
Yes, we had a meeting of the CAOs last week.
Okay.
And it was a very good discussion. And I think from that, we got some sort of direction. I don't want to say direction, but a better understanding of what the CAOs and the municipalities may wish to see going forward. And the bottom line is it's sort of looking at, you know, everything's on the table in terms of collaboration, but to look at some, I don't want to say easy wins, but more achievable collaboration efforts in the short term to try and get those down and have those looked at. So it's sort of baby steps first into bigger things later on.
Thank you. And so my thinking on this is, you know, you're asking for feedback as far as what everybody's interested in or what each municipality is interested in. I'm curious how many municipalities are willing to say, absolutely, they're interested in anything before they see costs. And I very much understand that everything's on the table until costs are associated to it, right? And sort of the ease or the difficulty of implementation and forward movement on it. And I've been looking at this for a little while, and I've written some notes down just in terms of the 4 feedbacks that you're looking for. But you know, I think really all are dependent on, well, are we the only one that's interested in this, or is everybody else interested in this as well? There's a chicken and egg aspect to this that's a little difficult to overcome for me. So I think I would agree with very much that, you know, everything's of interest. Is everything feasible? I don't know. I think there's a few things for South Glengarry to sort of figure out, identify in terms of priorities. And I keep going back to the bag limit. That's my drum that I keep beating. But you know, that's it. There's a difference in terms of, you know, what South Glengarry needs, what North Glengarry needs, what North and South Stormont need, and what South and North Dundas need, just in terms of bags, in terms of services they're providing now. And obviously you made mention of, you know, sort of evening out the services provided. Is it doable? Can it be done? And is that what this looks like? I'm curious about that too.
Yeah, perhaps I can give you a little bit more on that. The concept would be, we've looked at, we have an inventory of all the services that are provided by the 6 municipalities, and the bag limits and those things. So the concept would be to have a level of service that would be uniform, and we refer to it as base level, that everybody's going to have. And then if there are specific services that are requested over and above that. So for example, let's take leaf and yard waste collection. That's, you know, that varies across, you know, all 6 municipalities. Some have, you know, twice a year, some, you know, 3 or 4 times, and some a drop off and things like that. So if a municipality wants to have collection curbside, you know, during the summer, you know, 4 months for the year or 6 months for the year, and that's something that could be added on as on top of your base service. It wouldn't apply to all municipalities. So that's sort of the concept of it. Exactly how it's going to play out, we'd have to look at that more closely once we know what types of services would be included, and who would be responsible for ensuring that those services get provided. You know, if it's one municipality or group or the region, or sorry, the counties, then we'd have to look at it from that perspective as well. With respect to collaboration efforts and options going forward, you're correct. It is a chicken and egg situation. However, we have a sense, we think, of what may work, but I think we are at the point in time where if we can, you know, talk to each municipality and see if each one has some idea of what they'd like to see, then we can try to roll that in and then come back with a set of options that would already have some flavor of what municipalities want to see, rather than, you know, produce something that people are not going to be interested in off the bat. So I think that's where we are right now. So coming forward, there'll be another, in phase 3, there will be some options with some analysis and so on that would be presented for further conversation.
Okay, thank you. Actually, one other question. Have you worked with other regions where this has been done, where, you know, sort of 6 or 7 municipalities or areas have started to work together and have started to either share landfills or share collection or anything of that sort? Have you, how many places have you seen do this?
Yes, I was part of that whole thing in that whole transition in Niagara. This, I'm talking 25 years ago now. So sort of similar situation in the sense that you have a regional government, 12 local municipalities, and at the end of the day, solid waste was transferred up to the region, simply because of the fact that the region already had a robust structure and had the resources to be able to take it forward, rather than sort of 12 municipalities trying to work together on agreements and so on. Even though before that, they did get recycling going as a club. all 12 were agreed, and there was a recycling program. There was a move going. It's now the region's move that's working here, and it's come a long, long way. Since the region took over, bag limits were, there were no bag limits at the time, and there was a lot of pushback on putting in bag limits. Now, I can tell you we are down to waste collection once every 2 weeks. And the bag limit is temporarily 2 bags, but it used to be, when it was weekly waste collection, it was 1 bag. So it's going to go back to 1 bag, but not immediately, because they just changed it in the fall to bi-weekly waste collection. Organics and recyclables are collected every week. And everybody is happy with it. People have grown accustomed to it. So, and there are also other services that are provided that people can participate. Hazardous waste is drop off whenever you can go there, you drop it off, things like that. So,
Okay. Would you say that the density of that area very much lent to the success of that transfer to an upper tier entity?
It's a mixed bag. You do have very urban areas, and you do have very rural areas.
Okay.
So you take places like Wainfleet, West Lincoln, even Port Colborne, and so there's some very high, concentrated areas. But you also have rural areas as well that initially, for example, that didn't participate in the organics program, but then they sort of honed in and picked certain specific areas where they would provide the program, the collection, and they sort of were included in the contracts that, this is the region did all of this now, not the municipalities as a group, but the region. So I think one of the advantages of sort of banding together is on the public education side. There's definitely some merit on that for sure. But again, who takes the lead is something that would have to come from the municipalities and what their preference would be.
Yep. Okay. Thank you very much.
Does anyone else have some questions? Aiden too, if you want to unmute. Okay, go ahead, Colleen.
I was just going to say, I like the idea of the plan and working together with the other municipalities for more opportunities for locations and resources like you were talking about. And then I like that you added in, Derek, about having, like, even if we have our own specifics that, each township would like to do even on top of the plan. My initial questions were kind of about the expansion, and Jennifer answered all those questions. So I guess just in terms of that, for example, Beaver Brook, looking at the expansion, if, I'm thinking timelines, if you do have to go to the ministry, I've seen how long some of those things can take. So I'm just wondering, I know like the Beaver Brook one is coming up like sooner than later. So I'm just wondering how that works in terms of timelines, like when it reaches the capacity, is it like it has to stop, or is there a bit of lag time kind of thing while we're still trying to figure things out if we haven't done that yet?
I can take a shot at answering that. I think the ministry is not gonna, they'll probably be hard on you, but they're not going to shut down. They're going to help you out, but you don't want to get into that position. So you really want to start that work. If that's your intention, you really want to try and get that initiated well in advance. And I think, for example, North Dundas, I think they've been, it's been 6 years, 5 or 6 years they've been working towards that expansion. So it does take quite a bit of time. to get it done. All the technical investigations, the EA, and Jennifer was mentioning earlier, you know, the sensitivities around some of the sites. It's all unique. Every site is unique, and you may have, you know, certain issues that may take some time to resolve. So, so you have to get started early. So I would say I would say at least 5 years in advance minimum. So I think, I can't remember which one comes due first. Is it Beaver Brook? Then you're probably looking at, you know, starting that next year. You know, trying to get that budgeted and get it going if that's the will to do that.
Stephanie, can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So I don't know if Jen is available, but I was at Beaver Brook with Chris spent longer time with Jen that day. I think Jen, and you may know this, Derek, it's the average life of landfill in Ontario is like cumulative with 444 municipalities is 10 years. So when you think 2031 or 2032, like, so yeah, some have 20 years to go and some might have less than a year, right? But overall, there's a huge problem here, just generally across the province. So yeah, we're gonna have to address it within the next year related to Beaver Brook for sure. That's why the study, the waste management study with the counties is so important, but it's also complicated. I was going to jump in earlier, but the CEOs, we're having a meeting tomorrow. We try to meet every couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, just especially during COVID, CEOs on the lower tiers. And, you know, when you look at the appendix in the report where some do it, well, like we contract out, other municipalities do it internally. There's union contracts, who's going to work for who. Even though we're small municipalities in terms of population, it's still pretty complicated if you were to put 6 lower tiers together. One thing I've really strongly recommended, I don't know, Mike, if you alluded to it too, but I mean, Cornwall is right in the middle, and Cornwall is in the middle of a study now. I think they're looking at $38 million to get things in order there. So I don't know, is that some place we should jump in? There's also, I know to the north of there's issues in Prescott Russell too. And giving the border of the 3 north municipalities, is that an option as well? So I'm gonna bring that up about Prescott Russell tomorrow in our meeting, but also I'm not sure why Cornwall's not in. I mean, this is before my time, so I can always make up an excuse, but I would have strongly recommended that Cornwall be part of this study.
I can find out why.
That was probably on our side that they weren't.
You should find that out, Angie.
Yeah, you're fine. But Angie, did you have some comments? Because I have a few too, but I want to give you the chance to speak
no,
first.
but I would like for the next meeting, I'll have some more information on the co-digestion initiative that we're doing at the wastewater treatment plant, which will be taking like our sorry, I keep saying hour, okay, which will be taking South Glengarry's compost at no charge to Cornwall's wastewater treatment plant and whatnot. So I don't have all the details on that yet. That project started before I started there. So I'm hoping by next meeting, I'll have more information on that and hopefully a presentation as well.
Cool. So, I mean, I guess from my perspective, like there's kind of like 2 streams for me for thought. There's the big ideas, and then there's sort of just like the status quo mechanics of it. And so I'd like to ask a question like on the big ideas first. Like, you know, this came up at County Council, and it wasn't part of like your phase 1, phase 2, but this idea of having like a regional incinerator. Is that Mike is laughing. No, but I mean, is that I mean, obviously, Derek, I assume, I hope you know a lot more about that than I do, but like, are we a region, like what's the minimum size region that would need to have something like that versus, having all these landfills? Like, can you give a sense, even if it's, very, very rough idea of like, size of community you would need for that and like costs, I guess, too?
Well, the one example is York Durham. That tells you the size of, the catchment area and the population and the waste quantity that's required. Because they had a joint, York and Durham, it's a joint facility. And that's what, the numbers added up to make it feasible. So if I'm sure in 40 years, there may be technologies that would be different from landfilling that may lend itself to smaller applications. But I think when you look at it across the province now, there's the only one that I'm aware of is that big one in York, Durham. But so I think, like I was saying I had a presentation to South Stormont last night, and they asked a similar question. And I think my humble suggestion is that you've got capacity, municipal capacity in front of you that's still available. Some, of course, with very little compared to others. On top of that, you've got I would say the reasonably good fortune of having private approved capacity within striking distance. And not very many communities can say that, and which puts them at a serious disadvantage. And I can tell you Niagara is in a similar situation because of the Walker's landfill here, that the region now has sort of a hybrid system working where some of the disposal is at the regional site and some of it is at the private site. But they've gone from the early 1990s from having no capacity available to now having capacity for the next 20 years. Plus they have all the capacity they've used from, the early 90s to now. So without building a new landfill site. And I think it was only about 2 or 3 years ago, they sought and received approval to do a lift at the Humberstone facility in Welland, which is, one of the bigger landfill sites in the region. So I guess the bottom line is that, the point I'm trying to make is that you've got capacity within your backyard, your capacity as well as private sector capacity. The only thing that's missing is for you to get together and figure out how to best use it collectively for everyone's benefit. And you've got Cornwall also in the mix, who would perhaps be willing to participate in any sort of collective discussions about, securing future landfill capacity and optimizing what's available. The one thing to note is that if I think sharing capacity individually would require certain approvals from the ministry to be able to move waste from one jurisdiction into the other. If it's at the county's level, then administratively everything becomes a county landfill. So the waste can move in between. I think you may still have to do some studies in terms of perhaps traffic issues, maybe some traffic impacts and things like that. But that's a consideration, and I guess at some point there'll need to be some discussions with the ministry to see what's possible once we have some ideas on the table then we can talk to the ministry and say, okay, can, South Glengarry take its waste over to, North Glengarry or whatever, can you do that? Can residents, instead of going to one of your sites, go to a different site to drop their waste off, that sort of thing, and what the approvals would be. Right now, you've got municipalities, each, you have that convenience for residents to drop off at a landfill site. You could look at even regionalizing some of that so that you have fewer sites, that people can access as well. Of course, the issue of convenience is always a big one. So, things like that would have to be looked at. But I think you've got capacity in front of you right there. It's just the first step is really how best to optimize it. And then beyond that, incineration and everything else can, that long-term planning that we said, could be done collectively can come after.
Okay. Okay. So in terms of my big idea, like incineration, that is something probably we're too small for, or probably it's something that's far too far out to really be part of the kind of discussions that we're having at this point in the game. Yeah. Mike had a question.
Yeah, sorry, just before we move on too far from what you just said, Derek, I don't want specific details. I'm just curious. So you mentioned if the counties were to manage the program, would you envision that local municipalities, the smaller, lower tier municipalities, would cede their existing landfills to the county to fall under their jurisdiction so that we could do that sharing of capacity? Is that that's accurate synopsis?
Well, it can be done one of two ways. It can be done through agreement between the municipalities. However, I think the approvals to the ministry would be a lot more to have that done. Mm-hmm. I couldn't tell you if it'll be easy or not until we have some conversations with the ministry. But what I can say is if it's the will of the municipalities to transfer the responsibility for waste disposal only even to the counties, then by virtue of doing that, all of those landfills are within the county's boundaries, municipal boundaries. So they automatically become a landfill that anybody in the region can use, save and except for maybe some specific issues, sort of, like traffic, extra traffic and things like that.
Yep.
So these are all pros and cons. Of course, the big will there is, do the municipalities have the will or the desire to hand that off? I mean, there's advantage that, landfill sites have capacity, they have value, but they also have liability as well.
Yep.
Once they close, as you know. So,
and that was one of the things I was thinking as I was asking you, just in terms of what we have now, those that are going to close soon, and those lower tiers still presumably would have to maintain that liability for post-closure care, rather than cede something historical to the counties and say, okay, now we're all going to take care of our problem. Yeah. There's definitely some stopping points in there, but who knows? There's obviously a lot of discussion to still be had there, but that's just an interesting point that I hadn't considered.
And if you look across the province, I mean, with upper tier municipalities, those jurisdictions, you've got a mixed bag. Some of them have all of solid waste. Some, the lower tier has solid waste, like in your case, for example. And in others, it's sort of a two-tier system where some parts of it would be at the upper tier and some parts would be at the lower tier. And typically in those cases, it's the facilities that are at the upper tier and sort of planning and things like that. But collection, for example, would be at the lower tier, typically in those situations.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
So covered big idea, not going back to my question, like the more like the mechanics of things. Like my impression, and you know, everyone else, committee members, please, like if you think I'm on the, you know, if you disagree, by all means, share that. Like I think one challenge for us, you know, at the lower tier is, you know, managing the landfills. I mean, we don't have tons of resources, right? We don't have lots of folks who are dedicated, you know, across the municipalities. There's very few of us that, you know, we're people that's their full time. And so I know that's been a challenge for us, you know, in terms of ensuring that our cover, you know, amount is kept to, you know, the minimum. And so like we've kind of depleted our capacity of our landfill faster because we weren't, you know, we were maybe being a bit generous when it comes to cover and that sort of thing. And same thing, like in terms of not having scales, you know, we're not necessarily really, we don't have a tight hand on what's going in. And so I feel like at the lower level, we do have a capacity, a resourcing issue when it comes to really maximizing the, you know, the use of the landfill, the longevity of the landfill. So I think there's a lot of benefit to having, you know, staff that's dedicated to that, whether that be like, you know, someone at the counties or not. And I think from a citizen's perspective, I don't think people are particularly attached to who's managing the landfill, whether it be a county or whether it be the township. I think there's that convenience point of when there is drop-off days, people like to be able to have access. Now, whether that means access at the landfill or access at a transfer station, I think that would be this. I don't think an average citizen would honestly care, as long as in terms of practicality for them personally, it's the same. So, I mean, that's my comment about managing the landfills. When it comes to just like waste pickup, again, in South Glengarry, like we have it outsourced. So I don't think folks have an attachment to who's actually picking up, you know, who's doing that run. You know, it's not township workers, so there's not that perhaps sense of connection that, you know, if it went. So I guess what I'm saying is it's neutral, whether it's a third party or if it's the counties organizing the third party. I don't. You know, again, if folks have issues, they might call the township to say, you know, my garbage wasn't picked up, what happened? But you know, a lot of times that gets referred back to the contractor as well. So I guess in terms of providing that service, I wouldn't see there being a lot of difference, you know, on who manages it, truthfully, because I think that the menu, you know, like the base model level of collection, I think, is fairly consistent. I mean, I know there's some different offer, like it's in-house or out-house, but I mean, or in-house or done by others. But you know, I think garbage collection is fairly standardized, apart from, like in our case, the number of bags. But again, from a citizen's perspective, I don't think it matters. I don't think there'd be a big concern who's managing that. I don't think, particularly if there's that menu of additional items. Like we like our big item pickup, you know, in the spring. We did have leaf waste, you know, yard waste kind of incorporated into that. So I think, again, if those additional menu items are included, I think that it doesn't really matter who's managing it, truthfully. I don't think. But I think, you know, a big challenge from the education perspective, sorry, I'm going on again. Like I think education, like on the waste side, is like reduce, better organic sorting, that sort of thing. But I think a lot of much more of the education component is really on the recycling piece, on what can be recycled, where does it go, and you know, I think there's you know, so again, there I think we have challenges also on the communication side, because you know, our recycling goes to another municipality and we're not always like right in the loop on what's changing. So I feel, again, like if we had folks who were dedicated and it was a common message across all the townships, I feel that there would probably be benefit there to the public, to the citizens, to understand, you know, what's available, and to have, you know, more robust programs, I think, to be rolled out, you know, when it comes to organics diversion, and you know, being able to perhaps partner with, like, you know, with Cornwall, where perhaps there's some, you know, there's because there's a bigger opportunity there. So I've rambled a bit, so I don't know. I'd like to, if anyone on the committee takes exception to anything I said there, or if they wanted to.
I think it's important to to team up with other municipalities. I mean, it is happening throughout Canada that other municipalities are teaming up. And because we're all like smaller little rural ones around here, I think it would be important to just even learn from others, or them learn from us, or probably us learn from them. But I think, I don't know if we can like motion something to see if council approved, like looking into something like that, to see if other municipalities, but I know that something needs to come out of this study, and I think we need to move quicker than sooner than later on something. But even just kind of having conversations with other even environment committees or other councils or other staff members in other municipalities, see what we can do to partner up on some of these things, even if it's initiatives or if it's like the big picture landfill sites and whatnot. I think it would be important.
Yeah. And so, Angie, to your point about like the procedure of like what's being collected today, if I understand, I don't know if Tim or Chris might want to jump in on here, but like, you know, they're as staff, I believe it's just a matter of them listening to us, so that that's going to inform the report that they're going to bring to council. So, and then that report from council is going to go to Derek in terms of what you know, what the feedback is from our area. So I don't know if we need like a formal motion, but if anyone from staff or wants to,
They're still
they're there. They just might. No, great, Kelly. Thank you.
Right, no problem. So, sorry, I caught the end of that, but you're wondering if you need a formal resolution to council on your recommendations, or?
Yeah, like what's the process? Like, you know, we're chatting, we're talking about ideas. Is staff taking note of this, and that's just going to be automatically become part of the info report that's going to go to council, or do we as a committee need to produce more official, you know, resolution, motion, that sort of thing?
So if the committee feels that, you know, you've made sufficient comments in this meeting that reflect your opinion, what we can do is summarize those opinions, and they will be included in our staff report to council. However, if you also want to, you know, perhaps set a deadline to, you know, submit additional comments to staff, you know, if you say, let's just say by a week from today or whatever the date may be, the committee can submit additional comments to staff, and then you know, Crystal and Chris can summarize those to be included with the report to council. So the short answer is yes, your comments will be included in the staff report to council. And so I don't think you need to, you know, pass a resolution or anything, prepare a report, unless that's something you have the choice to do. But we can simply just take your comments made tonight and any additional comments up till a certain day and include those.
Okay. I mean, personally, I like that idea of being able to feed in some ideas. You know, like if you can give us a week, I know you're on a timeline here to get the staff report put together, but I think I would appreciate that, have some time to maybe write it out, you know, sort of what my thoughts are. And I feel like trying to put together like a motion or resolution right now, I don't know, I feel like it would be insufficient. It wouldn't.
I just don't want our conversations. I just feel like our conversations always just happen, but nothing really comes out of it. So yeah. I just want like we need to move forward. Like there's like we should have like the world should have moved forward like 50 years ago. So we need to go in instead of having discussion. Like I want to see some like action here.
I'd suggest perhaps setting a date. I'm just looking at calendar in terms of meeting. So yeah, if you set a date of, say, you know, any additional comments, send them to Crystal by May the 4th, and then what we can do at that point is Crystal can summarize all the comments received as well as the discussion tonight, and perhaps send that out to the committee as a cumulative document, and we'll include that with the report that goes to council.
Mm-hmm. I like the sound of that. How about other folks?
Okay.
So much discussion. There's so much to be discussed about waste. So I don't, Angie, did you want to make any other comments about what I'd said, or your own comments, or?
I'll have it by May 4th.
Okay, no, perfect. And how about you, Colleen? Was there anything I said that you thought was, you want to say now, way off base? Or?
No, yeah, it'll be nice to have the week to just kind of think about more stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's
Because
so
I mean,
just,
I'd like to see what other municipalities are doing. So I want to take the time to see what other municipalities are doing in Ontario and others the size of ours.
yeah, because certainly the document that Derek put together is a very good overview of what's happening regionally.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely very regionally.
Definitely,
Okay.
I think your point about the mechanics of it and people's interest in who's providing it, I think it's completely valid. I mean, it's a discussion we're having at this level, and councils are having at council table level, and we're looking at the resources of each municipality, and we're looking at the cost for each municipality, and that's the responsibility of the taxpayer, right? The taxpayer, the bottom line for them is going to be, is it being picked up? Is it sitting at the end of my driveway for a day when it's not supposed to be? Am I paying more in taxes? I mean, that's it's maybe overly simplistic, but I mean, it's kind of bottom line, right? So I think it's a really valid point. So it's really figuring out what options it is that everybody does want, so that Derek and phase 3 can come back with this, ideally this baseline of here's what can be done and here's how everybody can get it, and you can do this, 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 and this if you wish. That's it's still going to take a bit to get this done, obviously, but chicken and egg.
Yeah. And I mean, one last comment that I'm thinking is, I don't know if this is possible, but I mean, obviously having extra menus means extra cost. So there's a disincentive there, right? Like, well, maybe we won't do that because it costs us more. But sometimes I don't know if there's a way of having the opposite approach, and particularly when it comes to increasing diversion and increasing like organics, if there's a way to have a carrot in the system, so that, because sometimes when it becomes very removed, people are like, oh, I don't care, I'm just going to put whatever in the garbage because someone else is dealing with it. If there's a way of incentivizing folks to to divert more, to ensure that organics are being diverted, I hope that those are things also that are part of the logic, so that we're all being encouraged to do our part, and certainly so that certain behavior isn't rewarded that we don't want to necessarily reward, I suppose.
Scales on trucks for each bin that's picked up.
That's well, I guess some trucks that have it, right, with like the standardized bin and it comes in with the arms and it lifts it, maybe it could, I don't know. That's high tech. Okay, so I guess we've probably spent quite a bit of time on this topic. So are we all right with moving on then to the next one and letting Derek off the hook? We're good, everyone?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you again, Derek. Thank you for coming to speak to us. I know you're doing the rounds, so I appreciate you coming to another municipality to discuss this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time and the conversation. I think it was a lot of good stuff that you all discussed here this evening. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Okay. So then that brings us out to the communication plan, which that's going to be you, Kelly?
That will be me.
Fantastic. All
right, so good evening, Environment Committee. I popped in at your last meeting, but just as a reminder, I'm Kelly. My name's Kelly Campo. I'm the Director of Corporate Services and Clerk here for the Township of South Glengarry. So part of my role with Corporate Services is overseeing our communications. So I'm here tonight to speak with you about a communications plan that we've been working on with regards to our waste management initiatives. So what prompted the development of this plan was based on some discussions held at the last Environment Committee meeting And then subsequent to that meeting, at the March 15th council meeting, the minutes for your February meeting were pulled for discussion. And there was some additional conversation about communications initiatives and a desire from council to see or hear about some of the communications that we have with regards to waste management. So we've established a communications team for waste management, which includes myself, Crystal as the secretary of this committee, Chris LeBlanc, and our communications coordinator, Shauna Beggs. So we've had a few discussions. We've put together a bit of a working document that I'm going to share my screen and provide you guys with a bit of an overview of these initiatives. So this, just a second here. This plan was put together by Shauna, our communications coordinator. I know it's going to be hard to see, but I'm going to zoom in in a second here. I'm just going to give you a little brief overview. So I'm going to zoom in to what is likely the meat of the plan, if you will, and talk a little bit about some of the projects that we're working on. So the first one up is we're working on a waste management awareness campaign, and that's going to be delivered through our social media platforms, namely Facebook, where we've been referring to it internally as Waste Wednesdays. So what we're aiming to do is on Wednesdays, share posts on our Facebook page, increasing awareness of the types of activities that residents can do to help with waste management, tips and tricks to help with diverting waste from our landfill. So that's mainly a social media campaign. This week, or late last week, you may have noticed on our social media page, we launched a Pitch in Canada initiative. So that Crystal did a wonderful job in organizing that. And this is a community cleanup event that's sponsored by Tim Hortons. So they provided the township with bags. The township then provided participants with gloves, sticks for collecting waste, as well as safety vests. So members of the community could sign up through our website, pick up their materials here, and just essentially were encouraged to clean up in their community. And we've had excellent intake. Crystal has the numbers. How many teams do we have as of today, Crystal?
We have about 50 participants right now.
Okay. Yeah, we actually ran out of supplies, so I believe we've ordered some more, and so this has had a lot of intake from the community. It's been pretty well received, so we've been happy with the engagement that we've seen with this campaign, and this will last until May 7th. Another initiative, we do this one on a yearly basis, and that's the garbage and recycling calendar. We are looking at shifting our approach with the calendar a little bit this year, simply because typically our calendar for garbage and recycling runs from August to July. And what we discovered this year, what we discussed, is the fact that our recycling contract is up at the end of this calendar year. And so we were hesitant to put out a full year calendar, as there's some unknowns come the end of the year when we have to retender for our recycling contractor. So in order to line the calendar up with our contract, what we've decided to do is in July of this year, or August, I guess, we're going to be sending out sort of a one-page info sheet with the tax bill, so that'll get to all of our taxpayers, as many residents as we can, and provide a one-page info sheet, including the recycling calendar, just a very, very condensed, lighter version of the calendar for that 6-month period. And then That way we can line up for future years with our contract to avoid any miscommunication. So that's something that we're currently working on getting organized. And then Angie was asking about Recycle Coach. So we have had a lot of work in the last couple of weeks, month or so, regarding Recycle Coach. We've at the same time, we were looking at a couple of other programs that could offer a similar service and potentially more, which is why we haven't launched it as of yet. But present time, we're very heavily leaning towards going with Recycle Coach, and likely you'll see that get rolling in the near term future. So those are just some of the more general projects we have going on right now. And then of course we have our yearly events that we typically will run awareness campaigns on, which include our Hazardous Waste Day, which takes place in September. We had some promotions for Earth Day last week. We're going to be running a campaign through the summer on e-waste and how to properly dispose of it, as well as our large item pickup week at the end of May. So this is a working document. As you can see, there's some information that needs to be filled in, but we'll be adding to it as we go. We started with a 6-month plan, but we'll continue, you know, as time goes on and we get a feeling for the types of things that happen on a year-to-year basis versus special projects. I think one of the really positives that's come out in the last few months is that we've established this communications team specific to waste management, and we're seeing some positive results, particularly with our social media. You know, we've had increased posts related to waste management and some really great engagement. So we've been pleased with the response to date, and this is something that we'll continue to work on going forward. So with that, I am just going to, and we can send this out. I understand you guys don't have a copy of this, so we can send it out for you if you'd like, but I'll stop sharing that now so it's not taking up your screen, and we'll take any questions that you might have.
Sure. Thank you, Kelly, for questions.
I see that like there's social media for say like the older crowd, like 30 and up and whatnot, but which is Facebook, Twitter. I don't see Instagram on there, but people that are 20s and younger, I think, you know, that there should be some outreach for them too, through social media, and they don't really use those platforms. Has there been talk about any other platforms, social media platforms that can be used? Like, I'm just surprised I didn't see Instagram on there. And like even like TikTok videos and whatnot. Like, I think that the younger crowd also need to be engaged. Don't laugh, Michael. I've never made a TikTok video before, but I know like at the city, that's how we engage a lot of, the city of Cornwall, that's how we engage a lot of the younger residents.
For sure. So we do have an Instagram page, and we can certainly, utilize that to engage a different audience. So that's great feedback, and it may not have been on that sheet, but we can certainly look into even, you know, reshaping our message or our posts to, you know, target specific audiences as it relates to the platform that we're using. You know, you may utilize Facebook, and you can communicate the same information in different ways depending on where you're targeting it. So we can certainly look at, we do have an Instagram page, and we can look at including the waste management communications through that channel. We don't currently have a township TikTok page, but I'm not opposed to it. So
I've never been on it. I just see videos. So
You never know. We
assume
could
it's
be
something-
the next viral TikTok dance. I'm all for it.
Yeah, maybe that's where
My
we
niece and nephew use it, so.
we engage the community in creating a TikTok to, I
Maybe
don't know.
the environment committee can do our own little waste dance.
Oh, God.
I don't know. I think I see a lot of committee members resigning now.
No, but that's great feedback, Angie, and certainly, we can always be looking for, different channels to get our message out. So we'll definitely take that into consideration as we continue to plan these initiatives.
Thank you.
I think it goes the other way too, like the older crowd that don't have a lot of the social media pages too, right? Like I know you send out the calendar, but I'm just wondering how else you could kind of get to that group too.
The ones that still read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for a little bit of history on that, actually, for many years we had a monthly column or ad in the Glengarry News. At one time, it was the Standard Freeholder as well as, and we had a run in the Seaway News as well. Now, my understanding, and I could be wrong because I was off last year on maternity leave, but I believe when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and there was a significant drop in community events because that was what took up a good chunk of that advertisement. We suspended those ads. We could always look at, bringing something back in as we move more back, as we move towards, normalcy, hopefully. But another component of those ads was we had a section dedicated to waste diversion and waste management. So certainly it's been done in the past. It's something we can continue or look at, rejigging it if we need to, and have maybe waste specific ads once a month or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely good point.
Yeah, no, it's true. Now that you mentioned that, I was like, we did used to have that column. I'm like, wait, it's not there anymore.
I was going to suggest that, and I mean, it doesn't have to be terribly complicated, right? If you're doing something every 2 weeks on Facebook, it can easily be doctored to go in the news, and I can almost guarantee that the news would be appreciative of the advertising dollars these days.
For sure.
Yeah. No, and that makes sense.
Sorry, I was just going to say that's really the only way we're going to cover, I think, that older demographic that is, their level of frustration with social media is, it's going to preclude them from using it, I think.
Yeah, and again, that recycling calendar is such a valuable tool. When we were open to the public, and my office is right by the front door, so I often would overhear what was going on out front, and I couldn't tell you the number of times that I would hear people coming in just asking for a copy of that calendar. So if there has been instances in the past where we had an incorrect date or something on the calendar, and there's no doubt people rely on that calendar because you could lose a whole day answering those calls. So that's definitely been a useful tool getting to that demographic as well.
It's going to be interesting going to this info sheet for the 6-month period. It's going to be interesting if there's kind of feedback to that, if people are going to be like upset about not having
I would like my calendar.
Yeah, I don't know how well received, and we're not set in stone on it yet, but the end goal is to get the calendar lined up with the recycling contract, because if for whatever reason this one comes up at the end of the year and we go to tender and end up with a different contractor and perhaps end up having to change a lot of the information, then we have a calendar for 6 months that's inaccurate. So we're trying to figure out the best way to balance that need to get the information to the community, but also to be efficient and recognize the cost of having an invalid calendar for 6 months. So we're working on it. We're not set in stone. That's one idea that's floating around right now, but more to come on that one.
I mean, I'll share like my personal, like, so when I get the calendar, what I typically do is I'll flip through it. And generally what I do is I rip out the page that has like the 12 months and the colors, you know, on the calendar, and then the map. And I like put them together, and that's what goes on my fridge. And then the rest honestly goes into recycling. But so I know I'd say at a minimum, those are the key pages. But,
absolutely. And that's essentially what we were talking about including there, is that map that shows when your collection day is, and then the year with showing, you know, the weeks.
Yeah.
So at a minimum, that will be going out.
Because I mean, sadly, a lot of, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Well, I was just going to say, do you not think you could get like a 6-month calendar on one page, and that would just sort of solve all of it? Just nobody would have any issues. It would all be right there, and you know, you don't have to worry about confusing people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, just last personal comment, like if it's like folded up in the tax bill, like I'm thinking it should be something a bit more robust, something maybe a bit more like cardstock, or not something that's already folded, or maybe if it is folded just in half rather than, but that does add cost. So I guess that's all things that have to be considered.
I'll tell you, with North Glengarry, it's a January thing, and it comes with basically a one envelope of a couple of mail-outs. You've got like 3 pages of information, and one is the calendar. You put it on the side of the fridge, and your references there for the year.
All right.
Okay. One thing about the communications piece. So like your first line, you know, am I misreading that it's very waste focused? So it's not like when it comes to the recycling piece, which is I feel where we need the more communication and more clarity. Are we waiting then for recycling communications for Recycle Coach to be sorted out, or are there going to also be recycling posts that are part of that waste communication line?
Yeah, so when we refer to it as a waste management communications plan, that's including recycling, like I guess corporately, like waste management, or waste management, it's not a department, but you know, that would include recycling, landfills, like there's the whole encompassing area. So to answer your question, it's not solely based on waste. We're looking at recycling initiatives, Recycle Coach, all of that.
But will people, like even before Recycle Coach, will get posts about recycling? Like
that's with the Waste Wednesdays, or if that's what you're referring to. That includes recycling, all of it. Yeah, anything relating to waste management.
Okay, that was my specific question. The Waste Wednesdays. Okay, great. Anyone else have any questions for Kelly?
Not a question, just a comment. I'm glad to see you guys are doing it. Good idea. And the messaging, I mean, we've talked about it for a long time, right? The taxpayers need to be engaged, and there needs to be an educational aspect to this. So I think really good way to do it, and great way to get it started. And I'm sure you'll get a lot of feedback on it. So that lets you doctor it after the fact and tailor it to what people want and what they want to see.
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Great. Okay. All righty. Well, if there's not any other questions on that one, that brings us to new business. I don't think we had any new business.
Yeah, I had sent out that information about having or present at the next meeting, if anybody had a chance to look at it. Again, like I said, having been connected with all these, I think South Glengarry should reach out to see what others are doing. And Lee Theodore, his project with the River Institute is for SDNG. So I forwarded off his email of his introduction. I just met him yesterday. He is a resident of Maxville, and he's a project coordinator at the River Institute. So I'm not sure if anybody's had a chance to look at that. I think it would be great if we could have him just kind of present at the next meeting to see how South Glengarry could use him, how we can see what he's doing and utilize him for, I mean, he's being paid to help us out. So did everybody have a chance to look at that?
Yeah, just-
Even though I said I forgot that we had new business, I did get to read it. So yeah, no, I think it's.
I don't have it on this computer. I have it on my work computer, so I don't really remember what exactly I sent. But
yeah, basically cards, sort of like almost rack cards, 2 of them.
oh yeah, that was forwarded to the, in the
Yeah,
group.
talking
Yeah.
about webinar town hall style, 15 to 45 minutes, and then his email intro is very, very well written. I was impressed.
Yeah.
I agree. Next month would be, I think, a good idea, and I mean, I would presume that he'd be reaching out to the municipalities in between. So there may be some info that he shares that could go on the Facebook Waste Wednesdays.
Yeah, when I met with him yesterday for Cornwall, I mentioned that I was on this committee too, and he got all excited about it, wanting to learn more. So,
Angie, can I ask you a question?
sure.
And it may be in the handout, but did you talk to Lee about the educational programs they run on site and how they're handling it during the pandemic? Because about youth engagement, we've talked about what we're doing for, well, you mentioned youth earlier, so we've got the spectrum of old and young, but especially with the River Institute, with the things there on the educational side, that if there, could he bring that to the meeting as well? I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, they do their you know, while we're talking about pitching, they do their river cleanup, and I mean, we're the waterfront's a pretty big thing in South. It's the nicest waterfront, right, Mike? And
Absolutely.
but you know, also the relationship with Akwesasne that I know the River Institute has. We're
Yeah, they have
working
their
close-
river report. I don't know
Yeah.
if he has. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I know he has the related to the climate change, but I think there's a lot of hands-on, you know, real stuff that the river, not saying this isn't, but that the Institute does that we could promote much more in South Glengarry.
Absolutely. And Lee said too, because the River Institute is not for profit, there's a lot of grants out there that municipalities could benefit from, but can't apply because they don't have, they're looking more for more grassroots, like nonprofits. So he said that anything that, you know, that there could be for funding for that the township would be interested in could help assist with that.
Okay, thank you.
And the River Institute is very successful in getting grants and funding.
Okay. So no, this sounds great. So in terms of like extending the invitation to Lee and to, you know, have these other points that, you know, we're hoping that he can touch on, would I don't know, would that be someone from our administration? Would that be who would reach out to him to, you know, to make it, you know, to get that sort of draft agenda together? Or I don't know if Tim or Kelly or Crystal want to comment on that, or.
I don't mind speaking to Lee if you send his coordinates, cell phone and or email. I can set something up.
Sure, I'll do that.
I know Lee well enough. Yeah.
Great.
Okay. That would be great. Just so that we, you know, we get the best, you know, be able to cover, you know, the stuff that's most important to us and make sure we do it in an efficient manner, just so that it's great. Thank you, Tim. Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Angie, for bringing that to our awareness. I'm looking forward to that we have a new learning opportunity for us, and then to share that beyond. So that's great. Thank you.
Taking everything from Cornwall and sliding it our way.
No, sometimes it's just, you know, when you're not aware of what's going on, like sometimes it's as simple as that. It's just that info sharing, getting connections. Okay, so then, are there any other items of new business? No, good, great.
No, I just mentioned before, like I'll see what I can get about the co-digestion, just to add to the presentation that Derek had. Derek sounded familiar with it, so I'll get Carl's side of it, who's in charge of the project for that, because he mentioned Glengarry several times.
Okay, is that to share? Would that be to share some info with us, or is that you wanted to have him come in to present it?
I'll ask him. He is my boss, so I'll see what he says.
Okay. Well, I mean,
I sent him an email earlier, but he hasn't responded. So he's
okay. Okay. Well, maybe let's start with. I mean, if you have information that's easy to share with us, I mean, might as well share it, and then we'll go.
Because I think that also goes hand in hand with the email that we had sent out about the food cyclers and whatnot. We should go ahead with that, or see what's going on with composting in general in this area.
Yeah.
And that was, I had sent an email, I think, about that, right? There's sort of a lot to figure out still. Angie, any info you can share on a co-digestion project, I'd love to see.
Sure.
When you mention it, my thinking was, and this is just, off the cuff sort of thing, but just because of proximity, it would be a fantastic pilot if there was interest in cooperation with South Glengarry. Glen Walter area would be fantastic for a pilot, just because of density and proximity. The cost would be, obviously there's cost, but it would be probably your most cost-effective area that you could do it and see if it's feasible. And that I get a little excited about that. That's pretty interesting, pretty neat.
No, and definitely when I've had residents ask me about, can South Glengarry ever get composting and organics pickup? That's where the majority of those questions were coming from, were from the Glen Walter area, where folks just not necessarily set up to have their own, composter or whatnot.
Yeah, they're more densely populated in that little area there.
Well,
compared to, say, Baysville.
There's issues, right? Like if somebody doesn't do it properly, if somebody makes a mistake, then you're bringing in animals and vectors that affect the whole neighborhood. It's not the same as living in the country and doing it and not doing it quite properly.
Yeah, like I've got things eaten out of my compost bowl right now on the back porch from chipmunks, but there's nobody around, so I don't care.
Okay, great. That's another great topic. So in terms of next meeting, did Lee give you an idea of how, or
he's wide open. He's accepting. He said, like I had mentioned that this meeting was at 5 o'clock. He said, fine, no problem. I sent him the invite to watch, but I don't know if he got it in time. So he's okay with whatever. I would like to meet more a little quicker, because then it goes into summer. So we can meet before that.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Well, did we want to go aim for the end of May? Because maybe we'll get the waste composition info too. That'd be nice. I don't know. Is that would and if it's Tuesday, May 25th, is that? Does that?
A month from now.
I'll say yes tentatively, but it's a day after a long weekend. So
okay.
Those days tend to go recover. Crazy.
So.
It's not even that. It's just schedule. It's just work.
Well, it can be. It doesn't have to be. I just kind of picked what I thought was I guess 4 weeks from now. It doesn't have to be that.
It's 4. What if we just go one more and go
June
the 1st? Yeah.
1st of June.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine with me, because Tuesdays seem to work for folks there.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's good for me.
Okay, great. So that'd be Tuesday, and we're doing the 5 p.m. as well.
Anytime is good for me.
Okay.
We're gonna presume Aiden is nodding in agreement.
Poor Aiden. I hope it hasn't been too painful for him to listen in to us.
Actually, I shouldn't say anytime. Anytime before 7. I'm too tired after that.
Yeah. Well, we it's 7 o'clock now. I think we're all going to turn into pumpkins. So
this is why we're finishing now.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, great. So 1st of June, Tuesday, 5 p.m. Fantastic. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for lasting this long and being so engaged to the very end. So can we have a motion? Oh, Tim, did you want to add anything? You're just waving.
Well, saying good night.
Okay.
Oh,
Good night. Good night. No, thank you. Thank you for participating as well. Okay, so I think I need a motion to adjourn, please. Thank you. And then we all approve. Okay, great. All right. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. Be well. I hope by the time we next see each other, y'all got vaccinated.
Sorry, one thing before we go. If we can manage to get agenda stuff at least a day before, because day
Maybe
of,
a couple days before.
ideally a
Yeah.
couple days, yeah. Day of doesn't do it at all for me.
Yeah, no.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
your night,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.